Hi, this is Martin Drummond with Progressive News. And what you're going to hear is is me hashing out a theory that I have about particle physics. You know, physics, the universe, all that kind of stuff. The nature of our material existence, what have you. And before I let you hear the video of me actually working this stuff out, I'm just going to tell you the conclusion that I came to, because I've been trying to figure this out forever, and I really did finally figure it out, and it's called an epiphany. I mean, when you get one, you know it. You know when you see it, kind of thing. And I saw it. I saw the answer to my question, and what I'm dealing with here is this kind of stuff here. There is no such thing as a solid or a vacuum. I put a picture of infinite, looking into an infinite mirror, one of those barbershop mirror type things. Anyway, so this, you can read this, but I was just getting started when I wrote this, and I was just getting it down so I wouldn't forget it. But conclusion that I came to is that, you know, what we perceive as solid or vacuum or anything in between, gas, liquid, solids, are really a ratio or a relationship between the sizes of the particles. So like I say, there's no such thing as a true vacuum. So like in outer space, if there's multitudes of particles in between you and what you're looking at, like a star. You know, you're looking at a star or maybe a galaxy through a telescope or something, and it's millions of light years away. It's a long, long ways away. Well, if there's just tons of particles in between you and it, because I'm claiming that there is no, I'm claiming that what holds everything together and keeps everything apart, when they talk about bonds and all this, is the material we can't see in between things. So what I'm saying is what sets them apart, what makes us perceive them as a vacuum or a solid. So like if you're in outer space looking at the sun, what you perceive as a vacuum is not a vacuum. It's just particles so small that you have no way of even seeing them, and other particles like the light coming from the sun are able to pass through them or between them or whatever, however you want to look at it, pretty much unhindered. Now when you get things that are more solid, like if you get clouds of gas and stuff, and it blocks off light and things like that, then they're larger particles. It's that simple. So it's a ratio, it's a relationship, it's the size of the particles, and what I'm saying is that the things that cause the bonds that we don't see, and the, what we call dark matter, and all these kind of theories that people have come up with, what it is, it's just the characteristics of the much smaller particles in between everything. There's obviously a lot of them. They're moving, or they aren't moving, or whatever. It doesn't really matter, right? What matters is that whatever they're doing, they're performing that and my point in all of this is because everything in my series are based in infinity. So I'm claiming that there's smaller and smaller particles ad infinitum, okay, forever. So no matter what particle you're saying, all this started when somebody came over to my house, and my parents were throwing a party, and somebody said, okay, go halfway to the wall, and then go halfway to the wall, and then go halfway to the wall, and tell me how many times can you go halfway to the wall without ever touching the wall. So that's pretty much kind of I guess that's been weighing on my mind for 50 years. So that's it. That's the relationship. Somewhere in there, everything is explained. It's all explained in those tiny and it's going to be based on what ends up holding it all together and keeping it all apart is going to be the relationship that the infinite particles, something that we can't grasp, and we're going to have a hard time trying to figure out how there can be an infinite amount of particles in a square inch, for instance, or a flat inch, or whatever, anything that you want to try and think of that we think of as existing as in the material world. The idea that it could be infinite. I mean, you understand the ramifications of this infinite thing? I mean, if I'm right, then there's an infinite number of worlds inside anything. No matter what you're talking about, no matter what you're looking at, whether it's the air in front of your face, there's infinite worlds within that. I mean, that's going to change everything if it's true. It's going to change everything for us. I mean, it's not going to change reality. It's going to change our perception of it, though. Because see, my first theories were about if time is infinite, then you as an individual are going to reoccur infinitely. And if space is infinite, you're going to reoccur throughout space infinitely. So what are you? Are you all those reoccurrences, all the variations of them, all existing at the same time or throughout time? What are you? Are you each instance, or are you all the instances put together? Is there some macro you? So I don't want to get into all that. All I'm trying to do is solid and vacuum and everything in between right here. And if you want, you can listen to me hash it out as I did, and that'll be coming up next, because I talk about a lot of stuff. Just like here, I got off into the other stuff about infinite time and infinite space and infinite constantly reoccurring and at the same time you existing. If the physical universe turns out to be infinite in nature, then everything about it is going to be infinite, including you. So, stick around and listen to me trying to figure this shit out, or, I've answered my own questions, so if you want to just skip the next part of this video, that's fine, but I found it very interesting. I just listened to it, and it helped me kind of clarify this. I'd already come to the conclusions, about this relationship that creates the, what we perceive as vacuum and solid. And volume's a good word for it because, obviously size and of the particles inside of like a finite area and their distribution obviously is going to be the factors, right? And speed, how they're moving, where they're moving, what their size is, everything like that is going to be how we perceive them. Like if we perceive them as gold, or we perceive them as gasoline, or we perceive them as water, or we perceive them as a door, wood, or whatever. And living things, that's going to be an interesting to think about. But as we perceive them, it's going to be all relative to the particles, their size, and their movement. So, maybe movement is yet another dimension of our infinite universe. I mean, I haven't really explained movement yet. I've thought about it a lot, and I've listened to a lot of theories on it, going all the way back to Catholic school, where they taught me that God is the original mover. That's their theory, that God moved things. That was the way that things started. An interesting concept. So hang out, listen to my next part of this video, or not. But thanks for watching. This is Martin Drummond with the Philosopher's Stone, Progressive News. Thanks for watching. Hi, this is Martin Drummond with Progressive News, and I'm going to start doing a series of videos based on the groups I have. And the Philosopher's Stone is a philosophy/science group, because philosophy is, after all, a science. It's where I discuss astrophysics and physics and stuff like that. Infinity is the unprovable theory that I base everything on in my philosophy, in my science, in my physics, and astrophysics. And it's the idea that, like, for instance, that let's say you just say you could walk through space, like through the air and everything. You just started walking out into outer space, and you just kept on going and never stopped, and you found out that there was no end, that you could just walk forever. Or if you were to turn around and walk in the other direction, you could walk forever. I mean, obviously the only limitations you'd have is if you ran into a planet or a star or who knows what, right? How do we know? Because we've never we can't do it. Now, infinity is it makes no sense to people, because people strictly live in a finite universe, right? I mean, you're able to look at your desk and go, well, that's about 6 feet by 3 feet. You're able to look at a ball and you're able to say, well, that's size I can pick it up with my hand. You know, everything is finite to us. And actually, if my theory that everything in the world, that material world, is based on the concept of infinity, that infinity is actually the true reality of everything, then there is nothing finite about your ball. But we all know the ball is the ball, right? It's finite. So in a sense, finite things must exist within the infinite universe. But at the same time, there's aspects of them that may be infinite. For instance, the particles that make up that ball may be infinite. They may be made up. Every particle in that ball that makes up that ball may be made up of particles that make up the particle within the particles in the ball. And those particles may be made up particles ad infinitum. May go on forever. So, of course, I'm faced with, if I want to, dwell in this world where everything is infinite, and I've come up with a variety of what I'll say are, I can't think of the word. Well, anyway, they're characteristics of infinity, but they're, well, anyway. So, like one of them would be the infinity of space. So, being able to go forever, walk out into space forever. The other one would be the infinity of size, which I was describing as the particles that are made up of particles made up of particles. So you've got smaller and smaller particles, well, conversely, bigger and bigger particles. So while we see universes, well, not universes, because universe encompasses the whole, right? Which, under the theory of infinity, doesn't even exist. But we see galaxies out there through telescopes, and it could turn out those are just the molecules that make up a particle in some little girl's ball that she plays with, right? Of course, then the immediate question is, well, if the girl plays with the ball the first time that the dog bites it and pops it, we're all dead, right? Well, my theory on that is that the bigger you are, the faster time goes, or slower. How do you figure that? So, like 1 second to the girl with the ball may be equal to 10 million years, right? So, in 1 second, millions of lives have come and gone, and decades and billions of years, etc. So, you wouldn't be affected by the dog biting her ball. That's just a theory, of course. Okay, so anyway, so these, I don't know why I can't think of the word. So you've got space, and you've got distance, more or less, when somebody walks out into space, and you got size, and that's size of the particles. Then you've got time, and I consider it open-ended as well. I say there was no beginning of time, no end of time. Dimensions. So these would be the dimensions. So far now I've listed off 3 dimensions of infinity. So time and space and size. I think I came up with more than that. But anyway, I'll think of them as I go along. Now, what I've come up with to explain why you have solids and gases, different densities of matter. My first impression, my first thought of that, on that, is that those are somehow related to the ratio, because even though everything is made up of smaller and smaller particles to infinity, there's still a relationship between particles, right? So like you've got in air, you've got less and less particles to more and more vacuum. But what I'm saying is that the vacuum is a result of a ratio of vacuum to matter. So I mean, it may change at any level, because you've got all these levels, right? As you go down, a particle is made up of millions of other or infinite number of particles. So that creates a level, right? What appears to be solid to you is made up of atoms and stuff. So that creates levels, right, as you're going down. And probably that would make sense that it would create levels as you're going up too. So that's a concept that needs to be explored, because where a level is created may be the important thing to understand, right? Because if molecular bonds and bonds between things that create solids to us create those solids, then it's important to understand that level. But now what I'm talking about is, in general, that these different states of matter, gaseous, liquid, high density, low density, are somehow created by a ratio of these tiny particles, infinitely tinier particles, at least within a level, a ratio between and remember, I don't believe in such a thing as vacuum. So the area between the particles that I'm talking about, between the bigger particles, that creates what appears to be vacuum between the particles, is really a ratio of smaller particles to smaller particles. So what you've got is, in between every particle, no matter what level you're on, you've got smaller particles in between them. And that would explain how things are separated, because they're separated by lower ratios. So larger objects that we perceive as an object, or that if we were at that size we would perceive it as an object, what keeps them apart, right? I mean, what keeps them apart, or what holds them together? Well, a logical assumption would be that it's the smaller particles in between them and the ratio of smaller particles to larger particles. See what I'm saying? So let's say you've got like a fish in the ocean. Okay, what makes it possible for all the fish to stay apart from each other is the water in between them, right? Without it, they'd all come crashing down to the bottom of the sea and it would be a mess. I don't know if that's a very good analogy, but my point is that it's the ratio, it's the density. And I say density is a ratio, and that it's ultimately, while it may be just like it's finite to us, it may be based on an infinite, but the ratio of those infinite particles to each other. I don't know, gosh. That's why it's called philosophy. It should be called confusing, right? I mean, it's really hard to understand, and the very concept of infinity that it's based on is impossible it's beyond the grasp of a human being. I mean, how can we, and yet at the same time, I'm trying to grasp it. So I'm starting with the assumption that everything is infinite in terms of the dimensions that or characteristics, dimensions, I don't care what you want to use, that I've described, size and space and time, and I don't know what else. Seems like I had more. Anyway, so first of all, we just can't really understand infinity, right? I mean, it's a concept and we try to grasp it, but by its own definition, it's not really something that we can understand. It's not like a million. We can't somehow try to grasp the number a million, and maybe we can only do it when we do it as $1 million as $100 bills in a suitcase or something, right? Okay, it makes 2 suitcases full of $100 bills, but an infinite number of dollar bills, that concept is like not something that we can picture in our mind. It's not something that we can relate to anything within our sphere of sense, our ability to sense, right? Because our senses are finite. But as a concept, the first thing anybody's going to tell you is that, yeah, I know what you mean by infinity. Well, how do you know what I mean by infinity when I don't even know what I mean by infinity? Well, maybe our minds are capable of jumping beyond what we could logically understand. Maybe our concepts are able to go beyond what we see and hear and smell and touch. It's possible, right? As a matter of fact, I'd hazard to say it's even likely. Alright, so that's my first in a series of articles I'll do for videos that I'll do for this The Philosopher's Stone. I think that philosophy definitely belongs in a progressive news environment. I think that philosophy is important to progressives. So, hope to have many more. Thanks for watching. This is Martin Drummond with Progressive News, doing the Philosopher's Stone segment. Thanks for watching.